What if I told you that the greatest enemy in your life has never been another person? It has never been your past. It has never been your failures. It has been the voice inside your own mind that whispers, "You're not enough." Every day, thousands of thoughts pass through your mind. Most disappear like clouds, but the negative ones, those are the ones we cling to. We replay them, we believe them. We let them shape our decisions, steal our confidence, and quietly determine the direction of our lives. Here's the truth that very few people are willing to hear. Your mind doesn't become your prison overnight. It becomes a prison one thought at a time. The ancient warriors who dedicated their lives to discipline understood something remarkable. They knew that the fiercest battles were never fought with fists or weapons. The real battlefield was within. Before a person could master the world, they had to learn how to master their own thoughts. This is why the principles you're about to discover may feel uncomfortable. They are not designed to make you feel better for a few moments. They are designed to help you see yourself more clearly. Sometimes clarity is gentle. Sometimes it is sharp enough to cut through years of illusion. If you've been waiting for someone to rescue you from fear, doubt, anxiety, or endless overthinking, this is your invitation to stop waiting. No one can silence the storm inside your mind for you, but you can learn to stop feeding it. The 7 Shaolin rules in this video are not about becoming emotionless or pretending life is easy. They are about discovering that your thoughts are visitors, not your identity. They come and go, but they do not define who you are unless you hand them that power. As you listen, don't simply agree with these ideas. Notice what happens inside you. Observe the thoughts that resist them. Watch the stories your mind immediately begins to tell. That quiet act of observing is where real transformation begins. By the end of this journey, you may realize that the freedom you've been searching for has never been hidden somewhere outside you. It has been waiting beneath the constant noise of your own thinking. So take a slow breath, set aside every expectation, and prepare to meet 7 timeless rules that challenge the habits keeping you trapped and reveal a quieter, stronger, and more peaceful mind that has been there all along. There is a quiet habit that almost every human being shares. Although very few people notice it while it is happening, a thought appears, and almost instantly we believe it. It arrives without invitation, and before we have even questioned it, it has already begun shaping the way we see ourselves and the world around us. Imagine waking up in the morning and the first thought that visits your mind says, "Today will be difficult." Nothing has happened yet. The day has not unfolded. No challenge has appeared, yet your body begins to tighten. Your shoulders become heavy. Your breathing grows a little shallower. You haven't responded to reality. You've responded to a sentence your mind quietly produced. This is how negative thinking gains its influence. It doesn't force its way into your life. It simply waits for you to mistake it for the truth. The remarkable thing is that thoughts are constantly changing. They appear, they linger for a moment, and then they fade, making room for another. Yet we often choose one passing thought and build an entire identity around it. We think, "I am a failure," instead of noticing a feeling of failure is moving through me. Those two experiences may sound similar, but they lead to completely different lives. One imprisons you, the other leaves the door open. There is immense freedom in realizing that your thoughts are not permanent residents, they are visitors. Some are kind, some are frightened, some are loud, some are deeply convincing, but none of them deserve unquestioned authority simply because they appeared inside your mind. When you begin to notice this, something gentle starts to shift. You stop fighting every difficult thought, and you also stop obeying it. Instead, you become curious. Curiosity has a quiet strength. Rather than asking, "Why am I thinking this?" you begin asking, "What happens if I simply notice this thought without following it?" At first, this feels unfamiliar. The mind has spent years practicing the habit of immediate belief. It says, "You will never succeed," and you respond with fear. It says, "People are judging you," and you withdraw. It says, "You are not enough," and you spend your energy trying to become someone else. But imagine meeting those thoughts differently. Instead of wrestling with them or trying to erase them, you simply recognize their arrival. You notice the tightening in your chest. You notice the story beginning to unfold. You notice the urge to believe it. And then, without forcing anything, you allow the thought to be exactly what it is, a passing event in the vast space of awareness. This isn't about pretending that painful thoughts don't exist. They do. Every human being encounters them. Even those who appear calm and confident experience doubt, sadness, fear, and uncertainty. The difference is not that they have fewer difficult thoughts. The difference is that they have learned not to surrender their entire life to every passing mental storm. Think about the sky. Clouds gather. Some are dark. Some carry rain. Some disappear within minutes. The sky never argues with them. It never clings to them. It never believes that one storm has become its permanent identity. Your awareness can be like that open sky. Thoughts may arrive with great intensity. They may even return again and again, yet their repetition does not make them true. A lie repeated 1,000 times inside the mind is still a lie. Often, negative thoughts survive because we feed them with endless attention. We replay conversations. We imagine future disasters. We revisit old mistakes until they become familiar companions. We believe that by thinking harder, we will somehow discover peace. But endless thinking rarely produces peace. It usually produces exhaustion. There comes a moment when you realize that another hour of worrying will not create another hour of wisdom. It simply creates another hour of suffering. This realization is not depressing, it is liberating, because if overthinking cannot rescue you, then perhaps you no longer need to depend on it. You can simply observe, you can breathe, you can let the thought exist without allowing it to become your identity. Many people fear that if they stop believing their negative thoughts, they will become careless or irresponsible. Yet the opposite often happens. When fear no longer controls every decision, clarity begins to emerge. You listen more carefully, you respond more thoughtfully, you become less interested in proving your worth and more interested in living it. Notice how often the mind speaks in absolutes. It will always be this way. I never do anything right. No one understands me. These words create invisible walls around your experience. Life is rarely as absolute as the mind suggests. A single difficult moment becomes my whole life, or one mistake becomes who I am, one rejection becomes my future. The mind enjoys turning temporary experiences into permanent conclusions. You do not have to agree. Instead, you can gently ask yourself, is this thought the only possible way of seeing this moment? That simple question creates space, and within that space, something remarkable becomes possible. Choice. Without awareness, every thought feels like a command. With awareness, every thought becomes an invitation that you are free to accept or decline. This freedom is not dramatic. It often appears in very ordinary moments. Someone criticizes you. Immediately, the mind whispers, "You're not good enough." Instead of collapsing into that familiar story, you notice it. You feel its weight. You allow the discomfort. You do not rush to defend yourself. You do not rush to attack yourself. You simply remain present. The thought eventually changes, just as every thought has always changed. The moment passes, and you discover that your peace was never dependent on eliminating uncomfortable experiences. It depended on not becoming lost inside them. There is great tenderness in treating your own mind this way, not with force, not with punishment, not with endless self improvement, but with patient attention. Every time you notice a negative thought without automatically believing it, you are teaching yourself a different way of living, not through struggle, through understanding. The mind has spent years practicing fear. It deserves patience as it learns something new. There will be days when you forget. There will be moments when an old story feels completely real again. This does not mean you have failed. It simply means you are human. Each moment of awareness is a new beginning. You do not have to wait for tomorrow. You do not have to become a different person before you begin. Right here, with the thoughts already moving through your mind, you can discover a quiet truth that has always been available. You are the one who notices the thoughts, and the one who notices them is always larger than the thoughts themselves. The more deeply you recognize this, the less power fear has to define your life. You stop chasing every frightening idea, stop arguing with every painful memory, and stop measuring your worth by the loudest voice in your mind. In that quiet recognition, you begin to experience something that negative thinking can never take away: the simple, steady presence that has been with you all along, untouched by every story the mind has ever told. One of the greatest misunderstandings we carry through life is the belief that peace comes only after discomfort disappears. We tell ourselves that we will finally feel calm once the fear is gone, once the uncertainty has been solved, once the sadness has lifted, once life becomes predictable. Until then, we wait. We spend our days hoping for a future version of ourselves that no longer feels vulnerable. Yet the more we struggle to escape discomfort, the more tightly it seems to hold us. It is easy to believe that difficult emotions are signs that something has gone wrong. Anxiety arrives, and we immediately search for a way to push it away. Grief appears, and we convince ourselves that we should be over it by now. Anger rises, and we feel ashamed for having it at all. Instead of meeting these experiences with openness, we treat them like unwanted guests who should never have knocked on our door. But life has never made such a promise. It has never promised that we could love without loss, dream without disappointment, or hope without uncertainty. These experiences are woven into what it means to be alive. They are not interruptions to the journey. They are part of the journey itself. The mind often creates an exhausting habit. It says, if I can just get rid of this feeling, then everything will be fine. So we distract ourselves, overwork ourselves, endlessly scroll through our phones, seek constant entertainment, or bury ourselves in plans for tomorrow. For a brief moment, the discomfort fades into the background. But because we have never truly met it, it quietly returns, often stronger than before. This is not because the emotion is trying to punish you. It returns because it has not been understood. Imagine standing in the ocean while a wave approaches. If you tense your entire body and try to stop the wave with your hands, it knocks you off balance. But if you learn to move with it, allowing it to rise and fall without resisting every inch of its force, something changes. The wave still comes, but it no longer controls you in the same way. Our emotional life works much like that. Feelings arrive in waves. Some are gentle, others are powerful. None of them remain forever. The difficulty is not usually the emotion itself. The greater struggle comes from the story we build around it. Fear says, something bad might happen. The mind adds, I won't survive it. Sadness whispers, "This hurts." The mind declares, "I will always feel this way." Disappointment says, "Things did not go as I hoped." The mind insists, "Nothing ever works out for me." Uh, the original feeling may be real, but the stories surrounding it often create far more suffering than the feeling itself. What would happen if instead of arguing with every uncomfortable emotion, you simply allowed yourself to notice it, not to encourage it, not to become consumed by it, simply to acknowledge its presence? There is something deeply honest about saying to yourself, "Fear is here." Notice the difference between that and saying, "I am afraid, therefore I am weak." One recognizes an experience, the other creates an identity. This distinction matters because emotions are constantly changing. Even the strongest feelings cannot remain at their highest intensity forever. They rise, they shift, and they fade. Yet, when we panic at their arrival, we often trap ourselves inside them far longer than necessary. Many people spend years trying to become fearless, yet courage has never required the absence of fear. Courage appears when fear is present, and we continue walking with wisdom instead of surrendering to panic. Think about moments in your own life that transformed you. It is unlikely that they came during periods of complete comfort. More often, growth emerged from uncertainty, heartbreak, failure, confusion, or loss. At the time, those experiences probably felt unbearable. Looking back, however, you may recognize that they quietly revealed strengths you never knew you possessed. This does not mean pain is something to celebrate. It means pain has the potential to become a teacher when we stop treating it only as an enemy. There is a quiet kind of strength that develops when you no longer expect every day to feel pleasant. Instead of demanding that life match your preferences, you begin meeting each moment with curiosity. What is happening right now? What am I feeling? What happens if I stay with this experience for one more breath instead of running away? These questions soften the instinct to resist. You begin noticing that emotions are not fixed objects, they are living experiences. They change shape as you give them patient attention. Sometimes all a feeling asks of you is to be noticed, not solved, not judged, simply noticed. The mind often believes that accepting discomfort means giving up. Yet genuine acceptance is very different from resignation. Acceptance says, "This is what is here in this moment." Resignation says, "Nothing can ever change." One is grounded in reality, the other is trapped in hopelessness. When you stop denying your experience, you free your energy for responding wisely instead of endlessly fighting what already exists. This applies not only to sadness or fear, but also to uncertainty. The human mind desperately wants guarantees. It wants certainty about relationships, careers, health, the future, and even how other people think about us. When those guarantees cannot be found, anxiety quickly fills the empty space. But uncertainty is not a flaw in life. It is one of life's deepest truths. No one knows exactly what tomorrow will bring. No amount of worry changes that reality. The more we insist on certainty before we can feel at peace, the more distant peace becomes. Instead, we can begin trusting our ability to meet whatever arrives. That trust does not come from controlling every circumstance. It grows from discovering that we have already survived countless uncertain moments before. There were days you believed you would never recover. Yet here you are. There were disappointments you thought would define your future, yet life continued unfolding. There were fears that seemed overwhelming, yet they eventually became memories. This is not evidence that life is easy. It is evidence that you are more resilient than your fearful thoughts often allow you to believe. Patience with discomfort also changes the way you relate to other people. When you no longer demand perfection from your own emotions, you stop expecting perfection from everyone else. Compassion grows naturally because you begin recognizing that every person you meet is carrying invisible fears, disappointments, and longings. The impatient driver beside you, the quiet coworker, the friend who suddenly pulls away, the stranger who seems distant. Each of them is navigating an inner world you cannot fully see. Recognizing this does not excuse harmful behavior, but it can soften the habit of immediate judgment. A softer heart is not a weaker heart. It is often a wiser one. There is immense freedom in discovering that you do not have to organize your entire life around avoiding discomfort. You can have difficult conversations. You can begin again after failure. You can love despite the possibility of loss. You can pursue meaningful work even when self doubt whispers in the background. The presence of discomfort no longer becomes a signal to stop. It simply becomes part of being fully alive. And as you continue practicing this quiet willingness to remain present, you may notice something unexpected. The emotions you once feared begin losing their power to frighten you, not because they disappear forever, but because you discover that they can visit without taking over your life. You learn that your deepest sense of stability does not come from eliminating every difficult feeling. It comes from meeting each one with honesty, patience, and a heart that no longer needs to run away from its own experience. There is a quiet belief that holds many people back before they even begin. It tells them that change requires a dramatic breakthrough, a perfect plan, or an extraordinary amount of motivation. They wait for the morning when they will wake up feeling fearless, disciplined, and completely certain. They imagine that transformation begins with a powerful moment of inspiration, yet real transformation rarely announces itself in such dramatic ways. More often, it begins with a single ordinary choice that almost no one notices. The mind learns from repetition. It does not become peaceful because you wished for peace once. It becomes peaceful because again and again you gently return your attention to what matters instead of allowing every passing impulse to carry you away. This is why discipline is often misunderstood. Many people imagine discipline as something harsh, rigid, or unforgiving. They picture forcing themselves through life with relentless determination. But that kind of force eventually becomes exhausting. When every step is fueled by self criticism, the journey becomes heavier than it needs to be. There is another kind of discipline, one that grows from respect rather than punishment. It is the quiet willingness to return, even after distraction. It is the patient decision to begin again after forgetting. It is choosing what nourishes your heart instead of what merely satisfies your restlessness for a few fleeting moments. Every day offers countless opportunities to practice this. When you notice your attention drifting into endless worry, you gently return to the present. When your mind begins replaying an old mistake, you recognize what is happening without feeding the story. When frustration appears, you pause before allowing it to shape your words. These moments seem small. They may even appear insignificant. Yet a life is built from moments exactly like these. Consider how a river shapes a mountain. It does not accomplish this in a single afternoon. It flows continuously, patiently wearing away stone through persistence rather than force. In much the same way, every small act of awareness gradually reshapes the habits of the mind. We often underestimate the power of what we do consistently because we are fascinated by dramatic results. We admire sudden success while overlooking the quiet practices that made it possible. We celebrate confidence without seeing the countless ordinary moments when someone chose to keep going despite uncertainty. The same principle applies to your inner life. You may sit quietly for 5 minutes each morning, simply noticing your breath. At first, nothing remarkable seems to happen. Your thoughts wander, your attention drifts, you wonder whether you are accomplishing anything at all. Then one day, during a difficult conversation, you notice irritation arising before it becomes anger. You take one conscious breath. Instead of reacting immediately, the situation unfolds differently than it would have months earlier. That single breath was not created in that moment. It was prepared through every quiet practice that came before it. The mind responds to what it rehearses. If it rehearses fear every day, fear becomes familiar. If it rehearses gratitude every day, gratitude begins to feel natural. If it rehearses patience every day, patience slowly becomes available even during difficulty. Whatever you repeatedly return to becomes easier to return to again. This is not because you have become a different person overnight. It is because you have gently trained your attention. Many people become discouraged when they notice old habits returning. They believe that if they still experience doubt, frustration, or sadness, then all their effort must have been wasted. But progress is rarely measured by the disappearance of difficult emotions. It is measured by the relationship you develop with them. Perhaps you still feel anxious, yet now you recognize anxiety more quickly. Perhaps you still become frustrated, yet now your frustration lasts minutes instead of days. Perhaps negative thoughts still appear, yet now you no longer mistake every one of them for reality. These changes are quiet. They may even seem too ordinary to celebrate, but they are signs that something meaningful is taking root beneath the surface. Nature offers countless reminders of this truth. A seed spends a long time hidden beneath the soil before anyone sees evidence of growth. During that invisible season, important work is already happening. Roots are forming, strength is developing, life is preparing itself for what comes next. Your inner life often develops in exactly this way. There are seasons when it feels as though nothing is changing. You continue practicing kindness toward yourself. You continue observing your thoughts. You continue returning to the present moment. Outwardly, everything appears the same, yet inwardly, something quiet is becoming stronger. Patience is deepening. Awareness is becoming steadier. Compassion is beginning to replace judgment. These changes cannot always be measured, but they can be lived. One of the greatest obstacles to discipline is the desire for perfection. The mind says, if I cannot do this perfectly, why begin at all? Or perhaps it whispers, I missed one day, so I have failed. Perfection creates impossible conditions for growth. Life has never unfolded in perfect lines. There are days when you feel focused and clear. There are days when your thoughts seem endless. There are days when your heart feels open. There are days when it feels guarded. Every one of those days belongs to the practice. You do not become more aware by only welcoming the pleasant moments. You become more aware by noticing all of them without deciding that any single day defines you. Each time you begin again, you strengthen something more valuable than perfection. You strengthen trust, trust that you can return. Trust that awareness is always available. Trust that no mistake is permanent unless you decide to stop learning from it. It is remarkable how much energy people spend criticizing themselves for being human. A distracted mind does not need another voice condemning it. An anxious heart does not become calmer through shame. Growth flourishes in an atmosphere of honesty and patience. Imagine caring for a young tree. You would not pull on its branches to make it taller. You would provide water, sunlight, time. You would understand that living things unfold according to their own rhythm. Perhaps your own heart deserves the same understanding. Instead of demanding instant wisdom, you offer steady attention. Instead of expecting constant success, you remain willing to begin again. Instead of measuring yourself against impossible standards, you quietly continue practicing. There is surprising freedom in allowing yourself to be a student of your own experience. Each moment teaches something. A difficult conversation teaches patience. A disappointment teaches resilience. A joyful moment teaches gratitude. A mistake teaches humility. Nothing is wasted when you are willing to learn instead of merely judge. Over time, discipline stops feeling like an obligation. It becomes an expression of care. You eat with greater awareness because you value your well being. You rest because exhaustion clouds the mind. You pause before reacting because relationships matter. You return to silence because it reminds you of what cannot be heard beneath constant noise. These actions no longer arise from fear of failure. They arise from respect for life itself. The most enduring changes rarely happen all at once. They unfold quietly, almost invisibly, through ordinary moments that are easy to overlook. A single mindful breath, a moment of restraint instead of anger, a choice to listen instead of react, a willingness to begin again after forgetting. These simple acts may never seem impressive, yet they possess a quiet strength. They remind you that lasting peace is not created through extraordinary effort, but through ordinary moments lived with sincere attention. As those moments accumulate, they gently reshape the way you meet yourself, the way you meet others, and the way you move through the uncertainty of each new day. Much of the suffering we experience does not come from what is happening in this moment. It comes from our struggle with how we believe this moment should be. We quietly carry expectations about how life ought to unfold, how people ought to behave, how quickly healing ought to happen, and how certain the future ought to feel. When reality refuses to follow those expectations, the mind immediately begins its protest. It argues with what has already occurred, as though resistance alone could rewrite the past or guarantee the future. This habit is so familiar that we often fail to notice it. We believe we are reacting to reality, but much of the time we are reacting to our disappointment that reality is not matching the picture we created in our minds. Consider how often the mind says, "This should not be happening." Those 5 words carry tremendous weight. They tighten the body. They close the heart. They invite frustration to become the center of our attention. Yet the event has already happened. The only thing still fighting is the mind's refusal to acknowledge what already exists. There is a profound difference between accepting reality and approving of everything that happens. Acceptance does not mean pretending that loss is pleasant, injustice is acceptable, or pain is desirable. Acceptance simply means seeing clearly what is here before deciding how to respond. Without that clarity, every action becomes tangled in resistance. Imagine trying to navigate through a dense fog while insisting that the fog should not exist. Your frustration may be understandable, but it does not make the fog disappear. In fact, it distracts you from moving carefully through it. The wiser response is to recognize the conditions as they are and take the next step with awareness. Life asks the same of us. There are moments we cannot change. A conversation has already ended. A mistake has already been made. Someone has already chosen to leave. Time continues moving whether we approve of it or not. The mind may spend years replaying these moments, searching for a different ending, but no amount of mental effort can alter what has already become part of our story. What can change is the way we hold that story. Many people unknowingly carry old experiences like heavy stones in a backpack. They walk through each new day with the weight of yesterday pressing against every decision. They expect every relationship to resemble the one that hurt them. They expect every opportunity to end in disappointment because disappointment has become familiar. They expect rejection before offering their kindness because fear has convinced them that protecting the heart is the same as healing it. But protecting and healing are not the same. Protection builds walls, healing creates space. One isolates, the other allows life to move again. Letting go of the need to control every outcome begins with recognizing how little control we truly possess. We cannot control the weather, the passing of time, the opinions of strangers, or the choices of those we love. We cannot force another person to understand us. We cannot guarantee success despite our best efforts. We cannot arrange life so that nothing painful ever enters it. At first, this realization may seem unsettling, yet hidden within it is an unexpected freedom. If so much lies beyond your control, perhaps you no longer need to exhaust yourself trying to manage everything. Perhaps your energy can be placed somewhere far more meaningful. You can choose how honestly you speak. You can choose how patiently you listen. You can choose whether fear or kindness shapes your next decision. You can choose whether you meet difficulty with awareness or with automatic reaction. These choices belong to you. They always have. The mind often confuses control with safety. It whispers that if every possibility is carefully analyzed, every risk anticipated, and every conversation rehearsed, disappointment can be avoided. But life has a gentle way of reminding us that certainty is never guaranteed. You may prepare carefully and still encounter failure. You may love deeply and still experience loss. You may make wise decisions and still face unexpected change. This is not evidence that you have failed. It is evidence that life continues unfolding beyond the limits of your plans. When you stop demanding certainty, you begin discovering resilience. Resilience is not the confidence that nothing difficult will happen. It is the quiet trust that whatever happens, you will meet it one moment at a time. This trust grows slowly. It develops every time you survive something you once believed would destroy you. Think back to moments that once felt impossible. There were days when your heart carried grief that seemed endless. There were nights when uncertainty stole your sleep. There were seasons when you questioned whether you would ever feel hopeful again. Yet here you are, perhaps not unchanged, but still here. That does not erase the pain. It reveals your capacity to move through it. The mind prefers dramatic answers. It searches for the perfect technique, the flawless plan, the guarantee that nothing uncomfortable will ever return. Yet life rarely offers such promises. Instead, it offers countless opportunities to practice presence within imperfect circumstances. A delayed plan becomes an opportunity to notice impatience. A disagreement becomes an opportunity to notice defensiveness. A disappointment becomes an opportunity to notice attachment. Every experience quietly reflects something back to us, not to shame us, not to judge us, simply to help us see more clearly. Often the greatest struggle is not the event itself, but the identity we attach to it. I am a failure. Rejection becomes I am unworthy. A fear becomes I am weak. These identities feel convincing because they are repeated so often. Yet they are stories, not permanent truths. The experience happened, the identity is optional. There is remarkable peace in allowing experiences to remain experiences instead of turning them into lifelong definitions. Acceptance also transforms the way we relate to uncertainty. The future has always been unknown. The difference is that sometimes we notice it more than at other times. The mind dislikes this uncertainty because it cannot solve what has not yet happened. So it invents possibilities, rehearses disasters, and mistakes preparation for endless worry. But no amount of imagining tomorrow allows you to live today more fully. The present moment quietly waits beneath all that mental noise. It waits each time you notice your breath, each time you hear the sound of the wind, each time you genuinely listen to another human being instead of planning your next response, each time you appreciate something simple that would otherwise go unnoticed. These ordinary moments remind us that life is not asking for constant control. It is inviting wholehearted participation. The heart becomes lighter when it no longer insists that every chapter must unfold according to its preferences. It begins appreciating what is available instead of mourning every imagined alternative. Gratitude grows naturally from this openness, not because everything is easy, but because not everything has to be perfect before beauty can be recognized. A single sunrise, a quiet conversation, the comfort of familiar laughter, the feeling of taking a deep breath after carrying tension for too long. These moments have always been present. The mind simply overlooks them while chasing certainty elsewhere. As resistance softens, compassion often follows. You begin realizing that everyone you meet is trying, in their own imperfect way, to navigate a life that refuses to be fully controlled. The person who appears impatient may be carrying invisible fear. The one who seems distant may be grieving quietly. The one who speaks harshly may be struggling with battles you cannot see. This understanding does not ask you to excuse harmful behavior. It simply reminds you that every human being lives within the same uncertain world. When you release the impossible task of controlling everything, your hands become free for something far more meaningful. They become free to offer kindness, to receive love without clinging to it, to learn without defending your pride, and to step into each new day with openness rather than fear. You begin discovering that peace does not arrive because life finally obeys your expectations. It arrives because your heart no longer depends on life being predictable before it allows itself to be fully alive. There are moments in every life that seem to arrive for only one purpose: to break apart the story we have been telling ourselves. We make careful plans, imagine certain outcomes, and quietly believe that if we are kind enough, careful enough, or hardworking enough, life will unfold according to our expectations. Then something unexpected happens. A relationship changes, a dream falls apart, a door closes just when we believed it was about to open. In those moments, the mind immediately asks, why is this happening to me? It searches for someone to blame, some mistake to undo, or some explanation that will erase the discomfort. Yet there is another question that carries a very different kind of wisdom. Instead of asking why this has happened, we can gently ask, what is this experience inviting me to see that I have not been willing to see before? This question does not remove pain. It does not pretend that loss is easy or disappointment is pleasant. What it does is open a doorway. It shifts us from resistance toward curiosity. Curiosity has a remarkable quality. It softens the instinct to defend ourselves against life. It reminds us that even in moments of confusion, there may be something quietly unfolding beneath the surface that cannot yet be understood. Think about how often the most meaningful lessons in your life arrived wearing the disguise of difficulty. There may have been a time when you lost something you believed you could never live without. At first, all you could see was the absence. You mourned what had disappeared. You questioned your future. You wondered whether joy would ever return. Months or years later, perhaps you realized that the experience had slowly changed you. It had revealed strengths that comfort never required. It had taught patience where there had once been urgency. It had opened compassion in places that had previously been guarded. The painful experience itself was never the gift. The understanding that grew from meeting it honestly became the gift. Life has a way of teaching us through experience rather than explanation. We can read countless books about patience, yet genuine patience is often discovered only when life refuses to move according to our schedule. We can admire courage in others, but our own courage becomes visible only when fear accompanies us and we continue forward anyway. We can speak about forgiveness for years, yet forgiveness becomes real only when we are faced with the choice of carrying resentment or setting down its weight. The mind often wants lessons without discomfort. It wants growth without uncertainty. It wants wisdom without vulnerability. But these companions rarely travel separately. One of the quietest shifts we can make is to stop viewing every obstacle as evidence that we have taken the wrong path. Sometimes an obstacle is simply revealing the next part of the journey. Sometimes what feels like failure is actually exposing an old habit that has quietly limited us for years. Consider how often disappointment reveals attachment. We become convinced that happiness depends on one particular outcome. We believe that only one opportunity, one relationship, one success, or one version of the future can satisfy us. When life unfolds differently, our disappointment feels overwhelming. Yet over time, many people discover that what they truly needed was not the outcome they had imagined, but the flexibility to meet life as it unfolded. The lesson is rarely about getting everything we want. More often, it is about discovering that our well being does not depend entirely upon getting everything we want. This realization creates tremendous freedom. It allows us to continue caring deeply while holding our expectations more gently. It allows us to love without trying to possess, to work hard without believing our worth depends on success, to dream boldly without believing disappointment will destroy us. Challenges also reveal the stories we carry about ourselves. A simple mistake may awaken the belief, I always fail. A disagreement may awaken the belief, no one understands me. A setback may awaken the belief, I will never be enough. These stories often existed long before the challenge appeared. The challenge merely brought them into the light where they could finally be seen. This is one of the hidden purposes of difficulty. It uncovers what has been living quietly beneath the surface. Without these moments, we might continue believing those stories forever. When they become visible, something new becomes possible. We can question them. We can notice how often they have shaped our decisions. We can begin releasing the identities that no longer serve us. Growth does not happen because life becomes easier. Growth happens because awareness becomes deeper. Awareness allows us to recognize patterns that once seemed invisible. Perhaps every criticism has always felt devastating because it touched an old wound. Perhaps every uncertainty has felt unbearable because we believe certainty was required before we could feel safe. Perhaps every ending has felt like proof of failure because we confused change with loss. Seeing these patterns is not a reason for self-judgment. It is an invitation to greater kindness. Many people respond to hardship by becoming harsher toward themselves. They believe criticism will somehow make them stronger. They replay every mistake, searching for proof that they should have known better. Yet shame rarely produces wisdom. It usually produces fear, and fear narrows our ability to learn. Learning flourishes where honesty and compassion meet. Imagine teaching a child to walk. If every fall were met with anger, the child would soon become afraid to take another step. But if each fall were met with patience, encouragement, and understanding, confidence would slowly grow. Perhaps our own hearts deserve the same care. Perhaps every stumble does not require punishment. Perhaps every mistake can become part of the learning instead of evidence against our worth. Life continues offering opportunities to practice this understanding. The conversation that did not go as planned, the project that failed, the relationship that changed, the dream that took longer than expected. Each experience quietly asks the same question. Will you close your heart, or will you allow this moment to deepen it? The closing the heart may feel safer. It may protect us from immediate disappointment, but it also protects us from joy, connection, and renewal. An open heart remains vulnerable. It can still be hurt. Yet it also remains capable of wonder. There is extraordinary resilience in a heart that stays open despite knowing that life cannot guarantee comfort. That resilience does not come from pretending everything is positive. It comes from trusting that every experience can become part of your understanding rather than an argument against your value. Over time, you begin noticing that difficult experiences no longer feel entirely meaningless. They still hurt. They still ask much of you. But they also become mirrors. They reveal where fear still lives, where attachment still clings, where old beliefs still shape your choices. Instead of turning away from those discoveries, you begin welcoming them with quiet honesty. The transformation is subtle. You stop asking life to remove every obstacle. You begin asking for the clarity to walk through each one with awareness. You stop measuring your days by how comfortable they feel. You begin measuring them by how present you were, how honestly you responded, and how gently you treated yourself and others along the way. This changes the direction of your life in ways that cannot always be seen from the outside. The circumstances around you may not immediately become easier. Challenges will still arrive. Unexpected endings will still appear. Uncertainty will still accompany every new beginning. Yet your relationship with those experiences becomes profoundly different. Instead of seeing them only as interruptions, you begin recognizing them as opportunities to grow in wisdom, compassion, patience, and courage. Little by little, the experiences you once wished had never happened become part of the very foundation that allows you to stand with greater steadiness, meet others with greater understanding, and move through life with a heart that is both softer and stronger than before. As you reach the end of this journey, remember this: the greatest battle was never against the world. It was never against your past, your circumstances, or the people who misunderstood you. The deepest battle has always been the one taking place within your own mind. Every negative thought that told you to give up, every fear that convinced you to stay small, every doubt that whispered you would never change, they only had the power you were willing to give them. The moment you begin observing your thoughts instead of obeying them, something extraordinary begins to happen. The chains you believed were holding you in place slowly begin to loosen, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you discover a strength that was never dependent on easy circumstances. Real peace is not found in a life without problems. It is found in a mind that no longer turns every problem into a prison. There will still be difficult days. There will still be moments when fear returns, uncertainty visits, and old habits knock at your door. But now you know something you may not have known before. You do not have to welcome every thought as the truth. You do not have to carry every burden your mind creates. You do not have to become every story your fear tells you. Instead, you can pause, you can breathe, you can notice, and in that small space between a thought and your response, you reclaim your freedom. Transformation rarely arrives with applause. It unfolds quietly through the choices no one else sees, the decision to respond with patience instead of anger, to meet yourself with compassion instead of judgment, and to begin again after every setback instead of believing you have failed. Never underestimate the power of these small moments. A mountain is not moved in a single day. A river does not carve stone with force alone. It transforms the landscape through steady persistence. Your own mind changes in much the same way, one mindful breath, one conscious choice, one gentle beginning at a time. So as you leave this video, don't try to remember every word. Remember the practice. The next time a negative thought appears, don't rush to fight it or believe it. Simply notice it. Let it come. Let it stay for a moment, then let it pass. You may discover that the peace you have been searching for was never waiting at the end of a perfect life. It has been quietly waiting beneath the noise, beneath the fear, beneath the endless stream of thoughts, ready to be recognized the moment you stop chasing certainty and start meeting each moment with awareness. If this message spoke to something within you, don't let it end here. Return to these ideas often. Each time you do, you strengthen a different way of living, one rooted not in fear, but in clarity, not in resistance, but in presence, not in self judgment, but in understanding. And if you're ready to continue exploring practical wisdom for building a calmer mind, a stronger heart, and a more meaningful life, subscribe and join us on the next journey. Until then, take care of your mind, be patient with your heart, and remember, a peaceful life doesn't begin when every negative thought disappears. It begins the moment you stop allowing those thoughts to decide who you are.